Hi, this is Kristen Collins, and this is my 615 final project. So I am a middle school music teacher at Pine Grove Middle School in Baltimore County, and I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade world music and orchestra classes. I'm going to start off with a brief overview action plan by going over a little bit that happens at each data meeting. We're going to look at a set of data without kind of any background information. We're going to talk about some notice and wonder statements. So we're going to be looking at the data for trends, something, their surprises. We're going to come up with statements that say, I notice something about the data, or I wonder why I'm seeing this kind of thing. Meeting 2, we're going to bring in some other data, outside data that will help us see if those and exploratory questions that we talked about in data meeting 1 are something that we should be concerned about. So are we still seeing a gap based on, do we see a pattern and specific target goal that we think we can identify based on these pieces of data? Then at data meeting 3, we're going to really look at that data to pull out some learning and instructional gaps. We're going to be looking at some student work, some quiz data, whatever we have, and say, okay, getting what is it that the teachers may not be teaching those students, and how important are those gaps? You know, is that the most important thing that we can change in order for the students to succeed? And then once we've come up with that and we've kind of ranked all of these gaps, we're going to look at some goals. What can we do for in the future so that we can get better scores, better data at the end? So we have the SMART goals that we're going to set for ourselves so that we know where it is we want to go with this information. Data meeting 4, we're going to take those goals and we're going to say, okay, how are we going to meet them? So we're going to create this action plan. So if we set that 75% of students will be able to do something, okay, what steps are we going to take to be able to get to that goal? So these are instructional interventions and practices that we can make in order for the students to succeed. And of course, we need to set some kind of assessment. We know whether or not we've completed these things. And it gives us some data too, so that we can check in and say, okay, are these things actually making a difference in student learning? We got to take that new data that we collected from data meeting 4 and our instructional practices and evaluate what we've done. So we're going to say, did we meet those goals that we set all the way back in data meeting 3? And we should know this based on the data that we collected from our instruction. And if we didn't, now we're going to have to say, okay, that didn't work. Where can we go now? What can we need? Or if it did work, yay, great, it works. So now we're going to go back to data meeting 1 and kind of look at maybe another data set, another issue that students have, and kind of start the process all over again. So team 6 was an awesome team with Brady and Verna and myself. And I was really happy that they were nice enough to let me use my data for most of this project. So this is some data that I have from the past year. And we would see a pre, a mid, and a post test for student performance, a rhythm unit that we had this past year. So this is real data from my classroom. So it was really nice to see us go through this because I really do want to use this next year. Had some issues. So you can see up in the top corner of this chart here, the percentage of students that met their goal was only 72%. So it's really important to me that that number get higher this next year. So out of the data, and we did our notice and wonder statements in the first data meeting, we went with this exploratory question. We wanted to know why students were able to do complete basic rhythmic problems at the midterm with pretty good scores, but they were dropping their scores or less able to complete complex rhythms at the final. So after we looked at that and to go along with that initial data set, we came up with some instructional gaps, and we narrowed it down to a couple that we thought were or could really benefit the students if we made some changes. So some of those included using peers in class to review techniques to use complex rhythms. Would be kind of having that reteaching movement and having the students teach in our class. We created a SMART goal for that. We also agreed that we should revise and share our worksheets with other instructors in the school. A large gap that we saw was once we got to the more complex rhythms, the worksheets gave less practice options. So it expected the student to understand the same amount of concept in less time. So our goal here was for us to be able to use our school or other teachers that we know to help us see if there are gaps in our worksheets in the future, so we could make some edits before giving them to the students. And then the last big goal that we set for ourselves was that we wanted to look at alternate assessment options. Was giving the students a multiple choice test or fill in the blank really the best way to assess these students? And we really thought that, giving them a real life situation to do this, for example, the students would be creating their own piece of music as a project-based assessment instead of your standardized test, to allow them to really their learning that way. So with those goals in mind, we went and came up with some instructional changes to the unit to really get to those goals. So my favorite content-led instructional tactic that we found was using Legos to teach rhythms. So each Lego size correlated with a different rhythmic length, and the students had to kind of work together to figure out what those different lengths are based off of knowing certain sizes. So students are really learning by exploration in this way, and we said that should happen twice, once at the beginning with the basic rhythms, and then again once we complex rhythms. Next, we talked about teachers asking deeper questions. So we talked about doing this either while students are working or at the end of the class using exit tickets, stuff like this, where the teacher actually has a list of the students and is off how students are answering along the way, so that we can kind of track and intervene if it's along the way. And it was also really important to us that the teacher really have these questions prepared in advance of the lesson, so that they could where the pitfalls might be in each lesson. Next, we said that students should practice teaching the information, because if they're able to teach it, hopefully that solidifies in their mind complex problems. So we said that they would present like a 2-minute lesson on a certain skill, and try that a couple of times throughout the course. And then they would have a reflective log or a peer critique, judge whether or not they're getting the information. And the second to last one is a dry eraser board activity. This was a lot more like an exit ticket type thing. So every day, and we're able to see a large amount of data very quickly. So at the end of a lesson, this is kind of our last stop where we can say, okay, are they getting this section or not? Is this something that I need to extend into the next day, or are they ready for us to move on? And then at the very end, of course, we've got that project-based learning where they create a multimedia lesson, take those little small lessons together and create a full-blown multimedia lesson teaching how to do rhythms. So after we set all those goals in an action plan, I met with Brittany H. and others' plans and did some. So the biggest Brittany suggested for us was that we make our SMART goals more measurable, and I really agree with her. I think that would benefit the teachers in the long run. So for example, we said that we were going to do this and to use partners in small groups to have students reteach and apply complex rhythm techniques, but we didn't say how successful we thought we should be. We didn't give it a numerical value. We didn't exactly give it say, yes, we met that, or no, we didn't. So she kind of a rewrite where the information was the same, that yes or no, we did or we did not meet that goal. That's the important thing that she picked out. But other than that, we had a really great conversation, a really in-depth conversation about this that we had suggested. No, our plan was great. For the future, this is a really interesting way to look at information. To use our action plan when we go back to in the fall, because this data came from my school's SLL, and I will continue with it this year. So it'll be really exciting to see if the changes that we came up with as a group will really help the students next year. I think my strength was really analyzing the data and being able to use graphs and numbers to really notice where there's an issue. So it's very obvious to me looking at the original graph, because the color differences, you can automatically see trends. And then when we set it to graphs, it became even clearer. So I think really seeing the data originally and those important parts was a great strength of mine. And a place for growth, I think, would be for me going outside my comfort zone to research and find instructional practices that could benefit the students. I kind of get stuck in the, well, I don't know what to do that we could fix this with. So really getting involved in PLCs, asking for help beyond the availability of people in my building, finding some things that are out of my content area that might be useful in my content area, stuff like that. I do have some useful takeaways. Overall, I thought that this useful. Most important takeaway from this project, through the data with a non-biased person, was really important because I'm so invested in my data. I saw it a certain way and I wanted to certain way, but using Brady and Verna, we were able to see certain things, questions, and challenge the way that I had already viewed the information. And then setting those SMART goals with measurable assessments. It's one thing to say, okay, we're going to change this and about it, but actually sitting down, okay, this is how much it's going to change. This is what we're going to do to change it. And here's the data we're going to collect to judge whether or not it's important. This project didn't work. Okay, maybe that one wasn't so useful for my time, so next time I can do these two and not that one. I think that's really helpful for becoming efficient. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I am really excited to use this in the future. Thank you.